It's been a while. Feeling spicy today. Alright, so I like to use this video format to kind of talk about some things that are maybe grinding my gears or just like some things that I'm seeing happen on the internet, talk through them. I'm trying to live up to that name as the electronic music mentor, so maybe we can open up a conversation and I can give you a little bit of my thoughts, do a little bit of mentoring, because some of you are running crazy out here in the comments. Today we'll get into what is real music. Who has the right to declare something real music? And if you buy a Midi keyboard, are you possibly able of creating real music? So today's topic was inspired by our friend Daniel X in the comments. And this is a comment that I get fairly regularly, which is why I think it's important to address it. Of course, I have lots of videos helping people choose MIDI keyboards. I like to focus on MIDI keyboards because I love them. But Daniel had this to say on my video. I have very little idea how people can get away with MIDI keyboards that doesn't have at least 6 octaves. How do you play a piano piece with those tiny keyboards? Where does your left hand go? Now, on some level, this is an innocent enough comment, but I kind of have seen enough of them to understand what they're actually trying to say beyond what they're actually saying. So if Daniel was actually seeking knowledge, I wanted to just let him know that people aren't buying MIDI keyboards to play full piano pieces. Many of us are not playing two-handed piano. I know that's not really what I do, and that's not how I make music. So I just said that. It's easy to understand. Nobody's buying them to play full piano pieces, and that's not the only use for a keyboard. But then Daniel came back and said, most of the things people play need 2 hands. That's basically every piece of music ever written needs 2 hands to play. The only thing I can think of is drums that you can get away with mini keyboards. Even cello has a wider range than some of those tiny keyboards. So, like I said, I have a way of knowing what this person is actually trying to say, as I've seen many of these comments before. And Daniel's just doubling down here, not quite understanding. And again, I try to just like acknowledge that and maybe just let him know softly that, hey, like your perspective is not the only one. Your definition of what music is and how it's made is not the only one. So I just said, you're coming from a very specific viewpoint. There are many more use cases for a keyboard beyond the classical uses you are aware of. Plain and simple. And then it just takes a turn. Then we get to the heart of the matter. Galaxy Brain Daniel shows up and brings his best. Music itself is a specific viewpoint in that it is played with notes, low notes and high notes. If I come from the musical standpoint, it has to be narrow. However, sound making is different. I don't even know what that means. I get that people can use little keyboards to make sounds, but it's very hard to make music with it. By music, I mean something that can be played in an orchestra or on a piano. All right, folks, new definition of music just dropped. Music equals can be played by an orchestra or a piano. Please remember that, because this is going to change everything for all of us trying to make music. I have to rethink this whole mini keyboard thing. I can see how a rap artist can use them to make a beat, but we don't really call Eminem or 50 Cent musicians. Broken, it's broken. Daniel's brain is broken. All right. So before we go on with the rest of this comment, this is like very, very common perspective and point of view from like amateur people who start studying music and feel like they have an elevated place in music because they are indeed studying it, or they're just like orchestra, classical enthusiasts, that kind of thing. This is very, very common. You point to the contemporary musicians who are very, very successful musicians and you say, that's not music. This over here is music. And the sad part about it is it's not just like people on their own having this idea. It's actually like perpetuated by institutions like music schools, like universities, oftentimes by the professors themselves, and then they cultivate communities of music students that end up having the same broken idea, and then unfortunately a lot of those become music educators as well, and the cycle continues, right? Back to the comment. They can do a lot of things with those little keyboards, just nearly not enough to make real music with melody, chords, bass line, instruments, all that. Clearly has not watched a video on this channel. And if we are going to have a keyboard to begin with, why not go the full range, at least 76 keys? Well, Daniel, a lot of reasons, but I think you're probably a pretty smart dude despite your comment. I don't need to explain the practicality of having a portable MIDI keyboard or even just the convenience or the need/want to have a MIDI keyboard. I don't think everybody has to fit into your little box of like you must have a 76 at least key keyboard. And it's really sad to see comments like this. And I realized at this point that I was not going to change Daniel's mind. So I just said, LMAO, hope your juries go well, nerd. Now, that was me making a pretty big assumption, because juries are this thing that music majors do at the end of every semester. It's like an intensive thing where you play everything you've been studying for the semester in front of like a group of professors. I did not know that Daniel didn't say he was a music student, but I just assumed it because the rhetoric, I've heard it before. I literally was a music major. I think I should start calling myself a reformed music major. But I've heard this before. And like I said before, it gets cultivated in these programs from the professors down. And I think one of the main reasons for it is many of these people classically trained, these music educators, whether it's in classical music and jazz music, those are the two main genres that are taught at many, many music schools. They get very, very defensive around those genres, despite the fact that the world of music is so much broader. Not only that the most commercially successful, you could say, music, even the most beloved artists in, let's just say, the US alone, are not within the classical or jazz realms. If you take the two examples he laid out, Eminem and 50 Cent, obviously very well-known artists, very beloved by their fans. I went to an Eminem show. It was the largest crowd that I've ever been in at a concert. People just shouting the words back at the stage. Like, no doubt the music that Eminem makes, from the first-hand experience I have, is effective and has positively affected many, 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 many lives, which I think is much more of a judgment towards what is music rather than what kind of keyboard is it made with. But people in that space get defensive of that because they've spent years and years studying, and oftentimes their careers depend on upholding, say, classical and jazz as these sort of elite genres, which, with peace and love to the classical and jazz community, those are great genres. I'm glad you've spent so much time studying them. I'm glad you love them, but they're not for everybody. So you have these professors, they kind of are scared because there's all these new things happening in music, with music technology, with just general songwriting, and music is changing every day. And they can't possibly keep up with that because they've spent years, maybe even decades, studying classical and jazz. And if they break out of that, they put themselves at risk to not be the experts in the field anymore. So what they do is they create a field around what they are experts in, and any kind of threat to that is perceived as such. It's perceived as a threat, and the response is to put it down, belittle it, say that it is somehow less than the classical and jazz space. And that's really, really sad because it's holding a lot of music programs back, not only for the students are not entering the music industry with a solid background for the most part, and to find meaningful employment in the industry, or even like meaningful paths as artists, because they're so far behind by the time they get out of school. But it's also just really sad at a standpoint of like, they're going to continue to lose funding and not be able to enroll as many students in these great institutions that allegedly have great resources that students should be able to access. That's the whole idea of like an institutionalized school. And it's sad that they're just failing at making that a place that fosters creativity and new artists and pushes the industry. Funny enough, I think my assumption that Daniel is a music student was correct, because in his follow-up comment, he doesn't ask what a jury is. You probably wouldn't know what a jury is if you were not a music major. And he just says, "That sarcasm doesn't count. And from the guy reviewing MIDI keyboards, I'm not going to call you nerd." It's all right, Daniel. You can call me a nerd. I'm a freaking nerd, bro. My mom made that Charmander. Literally like Star Wars action figures over here. I'm not offended, Daniel. Thanks, though. I feel your points are made towards me personally while I'm trying to stay on topic. I honestly wish you well. Life is hard enough. There's no reason to go head to head with others over some keyboards. It doesn't make us tough to judge others for their opinions. And this ending really got me because I think this is a based take here at the end. Life is hard enough. There's no reason to go head to head with others over keyboards. Now, I'm having trouble. If in the comments you can remind me, did I start this thread or did Daniel? Let me just scroll up to the top. Oh, Daniel started this thread. That's right. That's right. So when I tried to explain to him the flaw in his thinking, he decided to go head to head. But keep me in check, comments, if I'm wrong on that. It doesn't make us tough to judge others over their opinions. And unfortunately, one, this is not a matter of an opinion. Two, Daniel was the one that was immediately judging people in his previous comment when he's literally talking about judging what is music and what is not music. So this was Daniel's based take here at the end. He just doesn't quite understand how it applies to his own comments, unfortunately. Now, did I call him a nerd? Was that a little out of pocket? Yes, but if I'm not going to be able to change somebody's mind in a comment thread, I might as well be able to have a laugh. So apologies if that was offensive. And the heart of the matter is, of course, I would have to say that this is not a matter of an opinion. So it is a fact, not an opinion, that you can take a mini MIDI keyboard and make music with it. And I think this is like really, really important. I've made similar mistakes like this. I've had, my bad moments on the internet, my bad moments of judgment when I didn't fully understand something or I thought I knew more than I actually did. We should always assume that there is a world beyond what we know. We should always assume that there's more happening behind the scenes than we actually know. And we should also have the humble nature to assume that we are in all likelihood wrong about a lot of things. So to double down like this and to say it's a matter of opinion, and this is something that like internet brain rot does to people too, just because you say something doesn't mean it's an opinion. If we were having a conversation, do you prefer vanilla or chocolate? Obviously that's a opinion. If you come to my chat or my comments and say vanilla is not a flavor, that's not an opinion, that's just false. So not everything that we say is a matter of an opinion and is even up for debating, right? Like, it's not up for debate what is and what is not music. I mean, there are some academic discussions you can have around that, but it's certainly not based around like, do Eminem and 50 Cent make music? Or is it possible to make music with mini MIDI keyboards? Do you need a 76 to 88 key keyboard? That's not an opinion. You're just delusional at that point. So what's the takeaway? What's the lesson? I think it's just, first of all, I think I say this all the time, if you have the time to criticize the means in which somebody is creating their art, then you are spending time away from your art. And why does it even matter to you how somebody else creates? There are, of course, millions of different ways to create art. Not one is more valid than the other. Pull yourself out of the amateur abyss of having these debates and try to float above it. And by floating above it, I don't mean talk down to people down there. I mean literally pull yourself out of it and just define how you make art. What is the creative process for you? And the creative process for you is not the end all be all for everyone. Focus on yourself. It is good for you. If you enjoy making music or making art a certain way, continue to do that, refine that, make that as much you as possible. And when you do pull yourself out of that and exit from those conversations, you find that you're like so much more productive and like more people are drawn to you and your art. Unfortunately, that will also mean people like Daniel showing up and trying to invalidate your work. But again, you're not down in the abyss with that conversation. You're still going to press on and do what you do because it's who you are as an artist. And this is like a really sad thing. And I think you all need to push forward through feedback, or this isn't even feedback, just like ass backwards comments like this. A friend of mine reached out on Instagram when I posted this on my story, and he said, Jesus Christ, I don't know how you deal with it, man. This is why I'm not on YouTube anymore. And that's my friend Johnny Be Good on Instagram. If you go to his page, I'll show it on screen now. He has a lot of really beautiful synth jams. He does pixel art. He's like a really talented artist. And that was so sad for me to hear him say, like, I stopped doing YouTube because of people like Daniel. Johnny's art deserves to be heard, just like all of your art deserves to be heard, all of your music deserves to be heard. And to let other people sort of like infect that with their vitriol and their closed-mindedness, it's not what we do as artists. As artists, we have to elevate ourselves out of the conversation. Don't partake in the debate. Focus on you, your creativity, your pathway. So as you'll notice, I did not keep Daniel's name or photo anonymous in the video, and that is because I do think we need to be held accountable for the things we say online, because we're held accountable for the things we say in person, right? So I think we need to be accountable for the things that we say online. However, do not go to this comment and put any type of reply on it. Just don't do it. Do not message him, comment to him, harass him in any way. If you do that and I find out about it or I see it in the comments, doesn't matter if you're a longtime member, community member, whatever, I will block you from the channel and you'll be unable to interact with me in the future. But I do think, you know, these folks are commenting on social media and probably no one in their real life inner circle knows that they're commenting these things. So they don't get the opportunity to challenge their friends or their family members on the things that they're saying online. And it needs to be challenged, obviously. That's the only way we can grow. And Daniel's more than welcome to be a productive member of this community when he sort of wraps his head around these concepts, but everybody can be reformed. So that's not to say we're closing the doors on people like this. We just have to give them the time to figure things out on their own. And hopefully for us, as we're figuring things out on our own, we can just be a little more quiet about it and focus on ourselves. Is it that hard? Okay, and on that note, that's going to be the end of the video. Comment what you think, but also if you have nothing to comment at all, maybe just comment below and say, good luck on your juries, Daniel. Let's wish Daniel well in the comments. If you enjoyed this TAETRO rant, there's a couple more for you to watch on the channel. I also stream live pretty regularly. I have performances, tutorials, all that good stuff here on this channel. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on. Add one of my tracks to your playlists on Spotify, and that's going to be it. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been TAETRO. Have a good one.